welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you about the Angular CDK, or should I say the Angular Material CDK. It's just Angular CDK, but you need to know it's been maintained and developed by the Material team. So as they said, my name is Elad Bezalel. I was part of the Angular Material team for I think 4 years. And I want to tell you a story about what is the CDK. So when we started developing Angular JS material back then, we realized that we have a lot of code that is not particular to material. And since we wanted zero dependencies in Angular material, we wrote everything ourselves. So that ended up having a lot of cool stuff and a lot of features that people wanted to use, even though they didn't want to use the material design because they had their own UI components. So let's say the flex layout or the theming, all of these in AngularJS material, people were installing material and didn't use the components. And when we started developing Material 2 or just Angular material, we realized that we are repeating the same mistake. So with ng modules, you can contain all the code into a separate module and create something that is not specific. For that, we created the component dev kit, which will help you develop UI components or just beautiful material components of your own. So today I'm going to show you how to use the CDK for your needs, and maybe you can apply that into your company and maybe develop your own style using all the cool stuff that we already do and maintain. So I talked about why the CDK, because you want to have your own UI components. And yeah, so inside the CDK module, we have a lot of features, including gestures, bi-directionality for Hebrew speakers, Arabic speakers, accessibility, responsiveness, overlay, base components, and more and more. Today we're going to focus on overlays and some base components. You also will see some responsiveness and accessibility. Well, actually you will see everything. So let's start with the overlay example. It's been written as a workshop that I presented in ngconf. So I really recommend you guys to go to that link afterwards and do the workshop. It's a 10-step workshop, and it's actually really cool. And I think you'll love doing the experience of developing your own color picker. So I'm going to show you some cool feature that we developed in the overlay component, and how you can use it. So this is the repository. It's the last step in the workshop, and I'm going to show you how we did it. So first of all, let me serve it. So how many people here know about Angular material or use it? Okay, I see a few hands. How many people here have used or heard about the CDK? 1, 3, 4. Okay, so I hope after today, next time I will ask this question, I will see more hands. So let's see what's. So this is the last step, as I said, in the workshop. And you can see that I have a simple button here. And when I click it, it opens an overlay or just a color picker. And I can move the arrows. Believe me, I'm using my arrows. I can move the arrows around, and you see the focus is staying inside of the picker itself, inside of the overlay. I can choose a color, and it will fire an event from the inside of the component outside. So that means you can use it in forms and everything, and it's pretty simple to use. So you can also click, you can press enter or space, and as I said, the tab focus is staying inside. And if we'll go to the code, we will see, this is not it. Yeah, we will see how simple is it to use that component that we developed. So all I have to have is this color picker component here. Give it an array of colors, and this is how I insert and get the selected value. And I give it a name called picker. And in order to open that picker, I have another directive that I can put on any element, and I can say, you are the trigger to that picker that we just named. So I can have this line here and put it even on the title. And I can click the button and I can click the title and it will open the same color picker. And don't worry, every time you will, yeah, and also it's updated the selected value because it's Angular, right? So every time you will open a new date picker, it will recreate it because it has ng template around it. So it knows to create the component when you ask for it. So let's take a look on the overlay itself. So the overlay is a tool from the CDK that lets you open models or floating cards, you can say it, or just floating elements on your screen. And you say, well, it's not that hard to create floating element on screen. But what if I tell you that this overlay can actually understand where is it on the screen and then behave? So first of all, you can see I have some positioning strategies, and I can tell it to be on the end of the origin element, start from the top of it. So we'll see that the pop-up will start from this corner here. Wait. Okay, so this corner on top here. And I can even tell it to start from the bottom. And now it will try to open from this corner, from the top left corner. But because it doesn't have enough space here, it will adjust itself to stay on screen, but try to put himself as high as he can. And also, if I click the title, of course, it works. And I can show you that if I give some padding, right, and I click it, it opens from the location that I wanted. Wait. And I want the top. But for the sharp eyes here, you see that the transition is not happening from that corner. So you may ask, like, why is that happening? So because the CDK is not related to material or any UI framework or any styling framework, we give you the power or the need to design it as you wish. So on top of the CDK elements, there is no styling, there is no CSS, and we give you the opportunity to style it as you wish. So I have on the component itself animation, as you can see here, sorry, and it's scaling from 1 to 0, from 0 to 1, depending on if it's closing on or opening. And on the HTML, I tell it from where to open. So it's very versatile, and you can put whatever you want here. And also you can see I have and I have a condition here. It says if you are left to right, then do from here, from left up, and if you are RTL, do from right up. So it also working with RTL, of course. So all I have to do is add to the HTML element the dir attribute and say RTL. And now my entire application is from right to left. And when I click it, it adjusts itself and works the same way. So after we talked about the positioning of the overlay, you can actually do a lot of other stuff. It lets you have backdrop, and you can say whenever there's a backdrop click, you want to detach or do some other stuff. And it lets you also, excuse me, this is the code for recreating the template that we talked about. So every time I click on something, we create a new template portal, and it will recreate the component. So if I go to the component itself, I wanted to show you, there's an input row size. And it also lets us go here to the row picker and say, I want the row size to be 2. And now, let me remove the RTL. And now it will open with 2 rows, right? And you can see that it's still working. The tab index is still working, and the arrows are still working. And it's very important for accessibility, because if you have, I mean, of course, you have to support accessibility because people are using your applications, and they expect your application to behave in a certain way. I mean, everything related on user experience, and if your users won't have a comfortable website or application, they won't use it. So you want to make it as accessible as possible, and it's really important to actually make it work at any condition, right? So I can also have like, I don't know, 8. Let me get the positioning back to the origin and remove the CSS. And it works again with 8 rows, 8 columns. And the way it works, it's actually pretty simple. We have something called from the CDK. It's called Focus Key Manager from A11Y. It's accessibility, and we tell it to have horizontal orientation, and that means it automatically supports left and right. But since we have a grid here, we want to make the up and down available, and to go from one row to another. So for that, we have to do a small calculation, and you can see the key manager actually lets you do it by just listening to the key down event, and then you can tell the key manager that now the active item is something else. We calculate the new index. It's just a simple calculation of where you are and where you want to go, and then you say this is the new active item. So you can control like every aspect of the accessibility and the keys with just the focus manager. And this is something behind this key manager. There's a lot of code that leaves you to be focused on developing your application, and not the layout of it, or just the code that handles keys. So inside of the CDK, there are a lot of stuff that just helps you develop UI components. Also, there's the directionality service, which is pretty. Where is it? That is a simple service that all it lets you do is ask the application, what direction am I now? And since it's we're in Angular, we can tell this service to tell specifically which part of the application are we and what the direction of this part of the application. So that means we can have multiple parts in the application that have different directionality. So that's actually really cool. I mean, it's not something you are thinking of, but if you have this thing happening, it actually works. And let me think of anything else that I wanted to show you. So yeah, I mean, without the animation, it will just open the floating element where you tell it to, right? So that's it for the overlay example. And I really recommend for you to go through the workshop. It's actually really cool, really simple to follow through. Everything is explained there. And if you have any questions at any time, you can just tweet me or send me an email, and I will be more than happy to help. So let's talk about the CLI schematics, or just the CLI. You guys know the CLI? How many here know the CLI? Okay, this is better. So the CLI is a tool from the Angular core team that helps you focus on developing your apps. And what I mean by that is they take care of all the bundling, all the performance issues, all the code compiling, everything, and lets you be focused on developing your awesome app. So that means you can go from one version to the next version, and it will improve your performance by 50%, or the load size by I don't know how many, because they're working really hard to get as slim as possible and as fast as possible. And 8 months ago, they implemented something called schematics. So the schematics are a way to the Angular CLI compiler, is the way to tell it how to generate or manipulate parts of your code. So if you know Yeoman or Plop or other generators, all they can do is they can add files, add maybe lines, or remove files. It can't actually modify or go through your code and fix it. And the schematics actually lets you modify code when you run it. So what I mean by that is if you go from Angular 6 to 7, which is supposed to come really soon, and you say and you tell the Angular CLI, hey, Angular CLI, I want to upgrade from Angular 6 to Angular 7, it will automatically find all the breaking changes that happened between 6 and 7 and go through your code and fix them for you. So that means it will be easy to stay on the latest version and be on the latest features. I mean, how many times have you encountered a module that went from version 2 to 3 and they completely changed the API and you had to rewrite it or just leave it as it is? So this is actually really cool, and I like you should look into it. But the other thing it lets you do, since you can generate components or services, it opens up the opportunity to create your own component services or whatever you want. So in Material and some other modules, you can actually add schematics, specific schematics, and you can now generate predefined schematics code. So I already did that line, and I already added the Material schematics, and let me show you something. So this is, let me serve this application. This is just a simple Angular CLI new application. And you'll see here in a moment. As I said, it's just a simple CLI application, nothing special inside of it. I only added some styles from Material and some fonts, and I show you in a second why. So I can come here and say ngg Angular Material. This is, I'm saying I want to generate from Angular Material a schematics called dashboard, and I give it a name called dash. And you'll see that it created a new component with tests and everything, CSS, HTML, and also injected all the imports that it needs to my Angular module, right? All the material dependencies and layout module from the CDK that we'll talk about in a second, and even the dash component into the correct place in the configuration. So I just ran one line of code and I got this new component dashboard. So let's see how it looks. App dash. And now I have a dashboard, right, with 4 cards. Can you see it? Yeah. It has 4 cards with icons and everything, and I can start working with it. So the layout that you see, ignore the errors. So the layout that you see here from the CDK, it's actually a grid layout, and we can play with it and tell it to behave differently. So if I will resize my screen, you'll see at some breakpoints, it will change the layout, right? So now we have 4 cards, it's 1 by 1. And if I make it a large screen, then there's a call span on the first card, and there's a row span on the third card. And let's see how it looks. And if I go to the dash component, we see that there's something called breakpoint observer and breakpoints out of the Angular CDK layout. This observer is listening to the screen size changes or the screen orientation and fires an event every time that that it changes, right? And this breakpoints is sort of an enum that says it's a set of breakpoints in screen sizes. So it can say breakpoints and set, and it will be a specific range between I don't know, 720 pixels to 960 or something like that. So I can observe the breakpoint change, and I say every time there's a breakpoint, the screen size fits or matches the end set size, return this configuration, which is 1 call, 1 row for every card, and every other time return these cards. And I can add more cards as much as I wish, and I can tell it, okay, the call span will be 2 here, and this one will be 3. This is 5 and 6. And now you can see it actually have, by just adding some few lines, it works, right? And if I will resize the screen again, it will go back and will have 4 cards, because this is the mapping. And everything happens behind the screens for us, and we don't have to think about it. Yeah, I can define on the grid list from material how many columns I want. I can say I want 5 columns. And inside here, this is just the card. I can put it whatever I want. So now I have 5 columns, right? So this is pretty cool, and it's pretty nice, and lets you. I recommend go to the material website and look for the schematics and see what you can generate from material. But now let's generate something new from the new version of the CDK. It's a new drag and drop ability, and we will play with it for a few moments. So I created again the drag and drop component, and this drag and drop, you see, it's pretty simple. Let's see how it looks. Drag drop, and it gives us. You can see the screen, right? Yeah, and it gives us a new cool way to drag elements from one list to the second list, and it behaves really nicely and fluently. So we can also, this is not it. We can also go to the drag and drop component. We can see the configuration. It's two list of strings, and there's this drop handler that we'll talk about in a second. And let's add an input here. Input. And let's give it a name. Input. And let's say that I have a button. It says add. And on click, it will do add item with the input. The input value. And let's add this function. So add item gets some text, and it added it to the this.todo push text. Okay, so now I can add some list items, and I can rearrange them, and it's actually pretty simple to build a new to-do app, right? This is a few lines of code, and I have a new to-do app that I can arrange my my lists. Let's put it inside of a div so it will not break our sort of design. And now I can show you how you can add more lists, and it will be super simple. So let's say I want to have a progress list. It's an empty list for now. And now all I have to do is duplicate this. I will call it progress. And let's go through the directives that we're using. We say this is a CDK drop. Okay, this is a drop zone. I connect it to the list. I give it a name, and I say this is a CDK drop. Right. This binds the directive to the name that we're using. So whenever we use that name, it will know that it's the type of the CDK drop directive. And every time I drop something, I can add data to it, and I can tell it. I'm using it here to actually tell it from what list it came from. So I tell it this is from the progress list, and you can see CDK drop connected to. So I tell it here which list is it connected to, like which list I can move the items to. So here it's only I can only transfer to the done list. And let's have progress here, and let's see what's happening right now. So I do have a progress, but I can't move items to it, right? I can only move from done to do. And in order to fix it, I can say the to-do list, you are connected to the done list and the progress list. The progress list, you are connected to the to-do list and the done list. And the done list is connected to the progress list and the to-do list. And just by that, I have a working drag and drop lists that I can move items from one to another, which is really easy. And I can add stuff and move them around. And the CDK drag and drop ability just handles everything for us. And actually, it's pretty simple. You see that I'm binding the drop event, right? The CDK drop event, and we extracted it and left it for you to decide what's happening, because we want you to be able to do some whatever you want with it whenever there is a drop. So you can see that we're checking here if the previous container, and you can see the event is from CDK drag drop. So that means it knows you're transferring items from one to another, from one list to another. So we check if the previous container is equals to the new container, and if it is, it means that we're trying to rearrange stuff. So we say move item in array. It's a function that comes from the CDK, move item in array, right? CDK drag drop, and what actually it does, it takes the container and then rearrange stuff inside of it. It's pretty simple. And we also have transfer array item, and we tell it from which array to which array and what index it should be. So that helps us control how the drag and drop is actually working, and we can do a lot of stuff. So if you know Trello, for let's say we just created Trello because it's pretty simple and easy. So this is all I have to show you here. We can talk about some more stuff offline if you want. I'll still be here. And yeah, this is the new drag and drop schematics. There are a lot of cool stuff that are coming as well to the CDK and into material. There is a new animations that are going to get inside, or just in Angular specifically, and excuse me, and also the new Ivy change will drastically decrease the code size. And I just want you to go backward and realize that if you have your own UI, your own components, and you're doing something that it's not related to how this component behaves, think of maybe moving to the CDK and maybe improve the CDK in order to help others build cool UI components. So that was it. I'm, again, Elad Bezalel. You can see the slides at that link, or go through the workshop at that link. You can ping me at the Twitter, Elad Bezalel, or just send me an email. Find me on GitHub. Thank you very much.